Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from CES in Las Vegas, Nevada for our third year of coverage. And joining me to kick off 2025, we have Brian Comiskey, Senior Director of Innovation and Trends with the Consumer Technology Association, known as CTA. They are the producers of CES. Brian and I are going to discuss the key trends that we're discussing at CES 2025, and that includes the return of investment on AI, health tech, longevity health tech, energy transition, vehicle transition, and the innovation that they're using within that space. Brian, great to see you as always.
I'm so happy to be back.
Thank you for having us back, and I mean, this really is the sweet spot of our coverage here. And part of that is everyone has an AI product coming to market, whether it's internal or external. What's the ROI on that?
Of course, so we've seen so much excitement around generative AI and a lot of investment over in the last year. So there's really two tracks that we got to watch for. The first is on the enterprise side. It's about productivity. We saw it last night with the keynote from Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, a lot of discussion around AI agents. How do they become knowledge workers for us and move us forward into that return for just better, efficient enterprise operations? Digital twins, which is unlocking research and development potential at a fraction of the cost. And of course, humanoid robots, because there are productivity gaps in physical AI, which that's what we're starting to leverage and push towards. So you'll see a lot of that on the show floor. That's enterprise. Consumer side, it's how do those devices that we love, smartphones, laptops, TVs, and even smart glasses and vehicles themselves, become platforms for personalized software features and more, because we expect technology to coexist and collaborate with us every day.
Which is so interesting, because when you think about the efficiencies, even into our day-to-day lives that it brings on, and you see it around the floor, that's when you can start thinking about more critical strategy, better research, bring more academics into it, because you have these efficiencies that will save you those 2, 3, 4 hours a day. I mean, think about it, when you do a job requisition, it takes you 2 to 3 hours. Now you can put it through, kind of, tweak it with your branding and the way that you do things at CTA as an example, and then think about more strategic, more research-focused projects.
Exactly, because right now we live in the app economy, which is wonderful, it's powerful, where you move data from app to app ecosystem. That's a lot of friction though, because you have to authenticate that data, move it over individually. That's what agentic AI in particular is really going to specialize in, because it will autonomously do that for you. So it removes those friction points. That's a transition point for the entire economy. And there's companies like Chatbase that are on the show floor as well, showcasing how businesses can get customized GPTs and agents for their
and speaking of leveraging AI and the data that we're learning from it, right? Because data is a commodity these days.
Yes, datafication of everything.
Exactly, well, health tech. And that's why I find it interesting when you think about longevity specifically, how they're leveraging better structured data sets because of all this emerging technology. What are some of the trends that you're seeing within the health tech space?
Of course, well, you're actually seeing it physically on the show floor this year. The digital health exhibits have moved, most of them have moved over to the Venetian campus alongside smart home, fitness, accessibility, wearables, because when you think about all that data, it's communicating device to device, whether it's an ecosystem, to really create a personalized individual experience on healthcare. Because longevity is really about longer, better, and healthier living. So your smart home device should know what your lighting settings are, because that actually affects mental health. It can affect heart rate health, and how does that transmit back to your wearable and to your phone and other devices that also can remotely transmit that data to your doctor. So you're constantly in communication between provider and consumer. That's empowerment at the end of the day.
Well, and at the end of the day too, it helps physicians, surgeons, your medical team make better decisions because they have those data sets to go along with their clinical training so that they can produce better outcomes at the end of the day.
Exactly, and there's companies like OnMed that's bringing a hybrid telehealth called Care Station. It's like a box that you can walk into. It's a telehealth appointment with connected devices, including a drop-down stethoscope and a blood pressure monitor, transmitting your data in real time to a life-size telehealth professional that's on the other side of the screen, and it has privacy and security as well. So they're thinking through all of the facets of, when you have these technologies, you want to make sure it's private, secure, especially on the health side. And so you're seeing this innovation that's really taking telehealth in particular to the next level.
Which is so interesting. I want to talk about energy transition and the vehicle innovation that we're seeing with advancing auto tech, because our third year here, we are in the West Hall, which used to be, just in 2025, the EV Hall. And it would be like, okay, what cars, is BMW going to have, and the other automakers, what's going to look really cool? In just 2 years, this is like the electronification hall. And what's so interesting is with the energy transition and what we're seeing with this innovation, that also incorporates public policy, what legislation looks like, what private-public partnerships, PPPs, how it's going to advance the energy transition. I can't believe how much this floor itself has transitioned from just auto showcases to electronification of I mean, we have Caterpillar on the floor
Yeah.
here.
I mean, I walked around the show floor ahead of time and just was in awe
Yeah.
again of it. And you talk about Caterpillar. I saw an electric fire truck from Oshkosh, who's a first-time exhibitor. We're bringing in all these new exhibitors to showcase not just electrification, but you were seeing autonomy from Waymo, 100,000 plus rides a week now, but only in some cities. So what we're excited about is that conversation of trying to make sure that that type of innovation is also evenly distributed across the country. And that's where CTA really supports a national framework for autonomous vehicles.
Right.
And so that's where you're seeing the mobility side, but it's part of this energy transition story in general, which an energy transition is a new category at the show this year. It sounds like a new process, but humanity's lived through two. We did firewood to coal, then we did coal to fossil fuels. We're now doing fossil fuels to zero carbon. And that's where electrification of vehicles plays a role. And we'll even see some major power companies like Ineos, the largest Japanese oil company, is in North Hall showcasing renewable technologies.
Yeah.
They're trying to play this story because AI, data center technology, takes a lot of power. How do you do that sustainably? And companies have really shifted their model of being not just innovators, but power purchasers and really trying to build solutions that help drive it forward. And my favorite one I'll say too, in Eureka Park over at the Venetian campus, the startup pavilion, there's a company called Atrera Energy. They do modular nuclear reactors. So we're talking all different types of energy being brought to the show floor this year.
Which is so interesting in the climate tech energy transition space, because it's not one specific technology, like a semiconductor chip is an example, where you have certain companies that kind of are the acts in that space.
Yep.
There are thousands of different technologies going into this space, and it's not even the product themselves, but the infrastructure that needs to be developed, whether you're looking at the utility side or just physical infrastructure.
Or even the data center side, where
Right.
companies like Eaton who are here, they do data center cooling solutions. 40 to 60% of emissions from data centers is from cooling them. How do you make that more efficient? So there's no silver bullet to the energy transition. It actually takes innovation from any pathway you can think of to really make it work.
And I think it's interesting too, you're starting to hear about hybrid solutions.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, is electric power going to be the be all and end all? Probably not. You need redundancies, you need other ways to recycle different types of energy, and that's what I think is interesting, where it's almost like the digital asset space. It won't be DeFi versus TradFi,
Yep.
or old energy versus new energy. I think I'm hoping that we're coming to the integration, user experience side of the equation, where
Yep.
it's no longer us versus them, because there is a lot of cross-sector technology that's exciting here.
Exactly, and there's the enterprise story of how they're adopting all these and bringing it together. And there's a consumer angle too on the sustainability side. There's a company like Exeter that's here. Their whole focus is flexible solar cells that go on electronic devices, so like headphones, GPS-enabled dog tracking harnesses, for example. And that's helping consumers even be a part of this energy transition and sustainability story. That's one element. Or even there's a company called House.me. They do sustainable off-grid housing. So your entire house they build for you can power itself, because that's one of the biggest areas of energy transition is our grid is old.
Right.
And it needs a lot of innovation to make it more efficient. Well, we don't always have to think about it at the community mass grid style. How do you turn your home into a microgrid that can smartly power not just your vehicle, but maybe use your vehicle to power your home in case of an outage? And that's what Samsung and others are doing as well.
Which is interesting, because that takes some stress off of the grids as well.
Yes.
Right. And the utilities don't have to necessarily triage where they're going to send power to, if you have the ability to act a little bit more autonomously when it comes to regenerating different types of energy within your home.
Exactly. I think it's an incredible shift overall in the entire energy ecosystem, and really makes us rethink of, as you mentioned, redundancy is just good for business, and it's very good for energy. How do you make sure that there's continuous reliability and minimize external disruption?
All right, Brian, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks and for having us back here. And thanks for joining me from CES. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Market